everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany on this Friday. Here is my co-host, Emily Compagno. Also joining us, Tomi Lahren, Fox News contributor and host of Tomi Lahren is Fearless on Outkick and FoxNews.com. Rosanna Scotto, Fox 5 anchor and host of The Underground Economy on Fox Nation. And Paul Morrow, Fox News contributor, attorney, and retired NYPD inspector. What a day to have him, because this is our lead story. Former FBI Director James Comey is under active federal investigation for assassination threats against President Trump. I can hardly believe it. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. He posted this picture of seashells arranged in the shape of 8647 with the caption, "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." No, not so cool. In fact, 86 is frequently used as a call sign for murdering or getting rid of someone. You would think the FBI director would know that. While the White House swiftly condemned the message as an attempt to put out a hit against the 47th president, Comey took down the photo hours later and posted this curious explanation, quote, "The shells I saw today on a beach walk, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took down the post." You'll notice there's not an apology there. And it's hard to believe that a former FBI director with a storied career in law enforcement had no idea about the meaning behind 86. It's defined in the Urban Dictionary this way, quote, "To get rid of, originally for killing someone, the phrase 80 miles out and 6 feet under is reserved for someone who had to dig their own grave 80 miles from civilization and then get shot execution style." Comey had no clue. President Trump, though, is not buying it.
He knew exactly what that meant. A child knows what that meant. If you're the FBI director and you don't know what that meant assassination. And it says it loud and clear. Now, he wasn't very competent, but he was competent enough to know what that meant. And he did it for a reason.
So a source of mine at the FBI I corresponded with this morning, this is what the source said to me, currently at the FBI. The former director not knowing what that meant is one of the least believable things he has ever said, and that's a low bar. But the more he behaves like this, the easier it is to see how his leadership under the Bureau became so weaponized. It's made the work of Kash Patel and Dan to root out the culture and focus on the priorities of letting good cops be cops all that more important. I think that's spot on, Paul, because I want to pull up the resume of James Comey. Look at this. FBI director, you can see there, 4 years, deputy attorney general, Southern District of New York, Eastern District of Virginia, and in fact, at SDNY, guess what he worked on? The Gambino crime family. Yeah. So you don't think he knew what 86 meant?
You know, I always heard 86 referred to a bar downtown at 86 Bedford, a place called Chumley's. It's an old speakeasy, and it's still there, and the address is 86 Bedford, and so that's a bit of a New Yorkism. He was in New York. He was the U.S. attorney here. Now, full disclosure, he was there before I started bringing cases there. But that said, I'd heard about him by reputation, et cetera. And I think let's expand the story. I think what this really does, first of all, he's the former FBI director, right? He's playing with shells on the beach. I mean, this is what it comes to. Yeah. But secondly, this validates every one of the worst theories you ever heard about the deep state and the weaponization of the FBI. Let's remember specifically what went on with him in the lead up to the 2016 election, right? You had that story break about Hillary Clinton having a server in a bathroom out west someplace. I think it was in Colorado, and classified material on it, right? They do the deep dive on it. That is the Bureau. They come back with a term, gross negligence. That puts it firmly under an arrest. That's in the statute. Under Comey's leadership, that language, that specific language, got changed. And then he came out and he gave that very obfuscating press conference saying, we're not going to charge, nobody would go forward with this. You know who changed that language under his leadership? Peter Strzok. That's not as per me, that's as per CNN's reporting. That validates, this stuff validates all our worst theories about what happened. And I know plenty of good agents who are very happy to see him gone, very happy we have new leadership.
And you can't view this in isolation. You've got to view this in the context of Jim Comey's other statements. Watch him here. I'll ask you, do you think this man has an axe to grind? Here he is fantasizing about putting Donald Trump in a double-wide jail cell.
Do you agree with that it would be difficult or nearly impossible for the law enforcement institutions to put him in actual jail?
No, they would just put him in a double wide somewhere out near the fence, out in the grass. And he would eat there, he'd shower there, he'd exercise there, he'd be away, as Danya Perry said, from general population, but it's obviously doable.
I mean, that's not a normal fantasy, Tommy.
No, it's not. But as disgusting as what he posted was, and he says he just came upon it and decided to take a photo. He's an influencer now, I suppose. But to that point, actually, as much as I think that he has weaponized and as much as I think that he would likely like to see horrible things happen to our president, which is abhorrent, I've noticed a pattern with these Democrats or Democrat-adjacent operatives, and it goes right along with the AOC, the Bernie, the Jasmine Crockett. In order for them to get attention in this news cycle, they have to do things like this. They have to continue to up the ante because they get attention for it. And they don't care that it's negative attention. They care that people are talking about him. And that's what I feel like a lot of this is. I mean, President Trump had to address it, right? We're talking about it now. It's as if, and though to get relevance and a chance to hit the news cycle again, they have to do things like this.
Yep.
And there's never any consequences because cancel culture never catches up with these individuals. That's what I think this is, a play for attention.
You know, and talking about finding shells on the beach, Emily, that's apparently something he likes to do, and apparently he finds bizarre things on the beach. I ran pretty much every day of Christmas break on the beach. I never stumbled upon like violent messages about Trump or painted shells, but Jim Comey apparently does. I don't know what beach he's on. Look at this. This is a shell he stumbled upon in October. He put it out, and you can see it has a political message, vote Harris. He said, saw this at the beach. Ariel understands the assignment. I mean, he finds some interesting things on his beach walks.
Ugh. I mean, to me, this is like the embarrassing thing about social media is that it gives the quirky components of people an actual amplification method. Look, he and his meager amount of followers now sees essentially that he's relishing and reveling in the fact that violence is cavalier to them. And that, to me, is what this signifies, which is that you will never get a condemnation of violence from the left ever, and that they will always excuse and approve any threats of violence against the president because they have dehumanized him and they have created him to be a monster that needs to be destroyed. There's absolutely no humanity, and I believe that he should be held to a higher standard as a former FBI director. And the argument over whether he knows 86, well, that just either makes him incompetent or completely have grown up under a rock. I mean, even when you said server, I was like, oh yeah, cocktails. All of us who have waited tables, anyone who is in the real world, who has been at a restaurant or seen a menu, we know what 86 is. So for me, I think I see this as a spinelessness, because now that he says, oh, I didn't know, well, then why don't you own it? You sure behind the scenes and in front of some cameras are real bold about the comments you make about the president. So why don't you just own what you did instead of now trying to say I didn't know what it means? To me, it just adds invertebrate on top of the list of deficiencies and incompetence that he has. I hope, by the way, they pursue this legally.
Yeah, and it seems like they might be. You know, Rosanna, this was an op-ed he published in the Washington Post last year, and he was slamming Trump for inciting political violence. We should always worry about political violence, especially when violent rhetoric and behavior are embraced, even celebrated by one of our political parties and its leaders. For someone who's taken the time to write an op-ed about political violence, you think he would think twice after a bullet grazed the head of the former president, 2 assassination attempts. I think he'd think very hard about the messages he's putting out about a sitting president.
He's been very irresponsible in his words and his actions. I mean, we're talking about 86. He comes from a law enforcement family. Right. I mean, I come from a restaurant family. And so we know what 86 means. Like, get rid of whatever you're about to serve. It's gone. But what was so cool about that little rock formation or shell formation that caught his eye, that he thought it would be great to put on his social media? It was not exactly the right thing. And, you know, you go back 2016, a lot of people think he cost Hillary Clinton the election when he talked about, you know, investigating her for the private service. And then he also went after Trump back then for the Russian collusion. So this is a guy who said some crazy things along the way.
Yeah, and, you know, I didn't want to have our producers grab this because I don't want to give this man any more attention than he's gotten, but he did post something at 5:29 p.m. yesterday. Nice, from Publishers Weekly. Out Tuesday, May 20th. He has a book out next Tuesday. So you have to ask yourself, was there a PR component to this? No one's in his mind, but the book message came out about the same time as the beach walk when he found the message about President Trump.
Incredible. All right, so let's go first to the veracity of this issue, Jesse, of the potential. I don't know about you, but I have never once, and I've walked down the beach a lot, I have never in my life come upon a political statement in the beach made out of sea life. So I find this to be a bit too coincidental. Put up this one. There's another one on his Instagram feed as well. This one, another blue painted shell that he found in October of 2024 when he was walking down the beach. Vote Harris. And he posted this as well. And he said, Ariel understands the assignment.
Yeah,
so
he's,
I ask
he's
you,
not on
do
the
you
beach in
think
San
that these
Francisco,
are being
Martha.
constructed by James Comey with his little shells and then he takes the picture or not?
Dust the shells for Prince, Martha. I don't know if he made it or not. He obviously was trying to put a hit out on Trump, got caught, deleted it, and he's got a book out. Oh, what a coincidence. Any cop, any prosecutor knows the code for homicide. 8-6 isn't just a mafia slang, it's a military slang. 8-6, T-O, and a rotary phone. He was a Marine. He obviously knew what he was doing here. And he's not just any old FBI director, Martha. He tried to frame this guy for treason. Remember, he spied on his campaign. He got caught, got fired, leaked, and then ran away from Durham so he wouldn't have to answer any questions. He has called Trump a dangerous threat to the country who should be punished for the things he says. Now, I don't know if this guy wants attention for the book. And by the way, the book is about right-wing extremists who launch a terror attack in Manhattan, or if he wants to be arrested, because his life sucks. He's lost all his respect. No one likes him. And he's probably dying and goading the administration to put him in handcuffs, because that's all he really has anymore going for him. This man has set the Democrats back again. Everybody with common sense knows what this guy meant. Just like we knew it was MS-13 on the knuckles, Jessica. Everybody knows 86-47. So the whole country sees this, and then they lie about it. And then this is the guy that weaponized the entire Justice Department against President Trump. And it just reminds everybody the lengths the Democrats will go to lie. Meanwhile, Trump, he's trying to make peace. And this guy's calling for his head. I hope the Secret Service knocks on his door at his little beach house and pays him a visit, because this can't stand. After 2 attempts on Trump's life, you can't take this lightly.
I hope they figure out if his hands were just all over those shells, painting them.
Is there sand in your fingernails, Comey? Let me see your fingernails.
Jessica Tarlov, I mean, this is strange. This is strange behavior. It's like weirdly childish, the stuff he posts. When you go back and look at the way he posts things, I mean, he's out of a job. He can live any way he wants. He's writing this book. He's been writing novels. But what do you think about the fact that he was, willing to post this thing, which is such an, and then pretend like he doesn't know what it means?
It was really stupid, but it is also First Amendment protected speech. And 86ing, I'm not as familiar with the mafia lingo, but I do know what happens in restaurants when they say like 86 the meatloaf, and that means they're out of meatloaf. I also know that if you go on Amazon, you can find tons of swag that says 8646, which I guess in Jesse's terms was about kill Joe Biden. I know on Donald Trump's Truth Social feed that I saw that video with Joe Biden hogtied in the back of a truck, which I'm pretty sure means, don't treat him with respect, that the office.
But it wasn't the FBI director who was doing that stuff.
Well, it was actually the former president of the United States and a candidate to be president of the United States again, amplifying something like that. Matt Gaetz has tweeted about 86ing. Right-wing activists have done 8646, and now they're totally outraged. But I'll cycle back. Really stupid. It's not up there, and I have 11 days before the election coming out and saying that they're reopening the investigation into Hillary Clinton to be the most stupid, and that did actually cost her the election in the end in 2016. But James Comey has bothered me once again. It is leading every cycle. I wanted to come in and talk about the big, beautiful bill failing in the House Budget Committee, and now I have to talk about Comey. So mission accomplished that way, but it was just dumb.
Let's play this from Tulsi Gabbard with Jesse last night. Watch.
I believe Comey should be in jail.
I do. Any other person with the position of influence that he has, people who take very seriously what a guy of his stature, his experience, and what the propaganda media has built him up to be, I'm very concerned for the president's life. We've already seen assassination attempts. I'm very concerned for his life. And James Comey, in my view, should be held accountable and put behind bars for this.
So, Greg, what do you think should happen?
I don't know. I think you don't throw him in jail. You just kind of look. He went to the beach because he's all washed up. The thing I like is how the dying media is portraying this story as conservatives pounce on this. Oh my God, they're making it out into something it really isn't. You guys invented the pounce. You know, Elon Musk makes a salute. You spent a week on that, talking about how that was Hitlerian and how all Trump supporters were Nazis. The only exercise the media gets is by pouncing. So we're going to pounce a little. You guys hit the showers. The people who pounce every day on every little thing Trump has said and created hoaxes off nothing, do not lecture us on blowing things out of proportion. There's so many people whose identity is tied forever to Trump, but it's their choice. It's not like Trump spends his life thinking about this chuckle nut. This guy has Trump on the brain all the time. Trump has created a legion of people whose brains are somehow broken. And I said this, I think, yesterday. If the filter that you have to see life constantly has you waking up with disappointment and bitterness, you should probably change your filter. You know, Jesse,
yes.
Someone once said, holding on to a grudge is like drinking poison, hoping it kills the other person. I think it was either Nelson Mandela or Ryan Seacrest. But you see this among never Trumpers. The first thing they do every morning is they drink the poison. You know, and by the way, I don't begrudge Democrats. I don't think Jessica's like this. Sports is, politics is a team sport. So your guy lost. You don't like the guy who won. I see these grudges more on people on the right, never Trumpers, who have so much negative emotion that it impacts the way they look at everything and their own well-being. They have to learn from, like, this guy is definitely stuck with a broken Trump brain. And when you're on the beach making little stones, you got a problem. You look at, like, Bill Maher. When Bill Maher went to visit Trump, there's one thing you knew. Both of them felt a little emotionally lighter afterwards. There's something about doing that makes you feel better. You got to let go of these crazy. I mean, I don't care. He can do whatever he wants. He can write my name in stones. I don't give a damn. But he's just ruining his own mind and his own life.
You know, Emily, there were 2 assassination attempts against the president. And, you know, stuff on social media does fire up weirdos and whack jobs. And it's possible that this kind of thing from Comey could, you know, make someone want to do something terrible, because we've seen it. We've seen it happen twice already.
Of course. He's in a position of persuasion. He's in a position of authority. He was, right? He carries that title forever. I don't even like a post. I may crack up. I do not like a post if I think it would reflect poorly on the brand I represent at all times. It's so shocking to me. It's obvious that he's an odd duck. And I feel like that's where social media sort of like sucks, is when it gives everyone the voices that they're just weird. And you're like, oh, like the selfies he takes of himself. It just underscores that this wasn't, frankly, a normal person we've been dealing with, regardless of his high stature position. But look, here's the thing.
That's a great one.
I literally have like the same picture of me in like my cheerleading outfit. So I talked to my friend. He's a longtime presidential Secret Service agent, right? He was Hinckley's case officer, Jeff James. And he talked to me about that they investigate every threat. So the concept that there's somehow a question of whether this should be investigated, that's not the question. The question is whether it's actionable. And he talked to me about so many threats that, you know, they show up at some guy's house in central Pennsylvania. He doesn't even have 2 nickels to rub together. He has a rusty shotgun he shoots squirrels with for dinner. But they had to investigate, and upon arriving, realized, all right, his threats are full of crap, right? An inmate at a state prison that wanted to be transferred to federal prison. That's why he was threatening the president. But the Secret Service shows up. So Jeff Comey better wait for a knock at the door, because I know my tax dollars are going to be spent wisely. And at the end of the day, they'll just realize, oh, sorry, this is just some idiot's house, and it's not actionable. But final point real quick. President Trump, the amount that he has been indicted emotionally and specifically for his comments to incite others. So his comment, we will never give up, that was considered incitement. Well, then I think this is pretty dang close.
All right, here we go. So the Fed's investigating former FBI Director James Comey, accusing him of threatening President Trump. Comey posting a picture of, quote, cool shell formation on my beach walk. The shells spell out 8647. 86, of course, is slang for get rid of it. Trump, the 47th president, thus the 47. Comey later writing, quote, I posted earlier a picture of some shells I saw on a beach walk, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down. Here's the president's reaction. Bret Baier asked him about this on Special Report last night. Watch this.
He knew exactly what that meant. A child knows what that meant. If you're the FBI director and you don't know what that meant assassination. And it says it loud and clear. Now, he wasn't very competent, but he was competent enough to know what that meant. And he did it for a reason, and he was hit so hard. Because people like me, and they like what's happening with our country. Our country has become respected again, and all this. And he's calling for the assassination of the president.
Obviously, he apologized and said he doesn't.
Well, he
wasn't
apologized because he was
violence.
So obviously there have been two prior assassination attempts already on the life of President Trump. And with that, we bring in California Republican Congressman Darrell Issa, who faced off with Comey as member of the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman Issa, very good to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us. You know, first off, this is such a strange story. I mean, let's put back up this picture of this 8647 in the sand for just a second. And then I want to show you another picture that we found on his Instagram account. So there's the 8647, cool shell formation on my beach walk. Here's another one. This is from October 10th, 2024. This is also posted by James Comey. Boy, he finds some pretty interesting things when he goes out on a beach walk. This one says, saw this at the beach. Ariel understands the assignment. Ariel, obviously a reference to the Little Mermaid, who painted Vote Harris, he thinks, and set it up just perfectly against this little post. Let me ask you, Congressman Issa, have you ever seen anything like either one of these things, or really anything political? I would just ask everyone out there to think of while you've been out walking on the beach.
Well, you know, I have a home right on the beach above the harbor. I walk there all the time. I've seen some shells. I've never seen painted shells or stacks quite like this. But Martha, the reality is we have a higher level of awareness and scrutiny because there have been multiple assassination attempts on this president. And we have a higher standard for people who are in law enforcement, especially at the level of FBI director, to know or should have known. And in this case, both were true. He clearly knew, and everyone knows he should have known better than to do either one of these posts.
Do you think a random person put this on the beach and he just happened to see it? And the same thing with the Vote Harris shell? Or does this raise questions for you about whether or not maybe these were his shell designs on the beach?
I have little doubt, but that he knew who posted these, and probably it was him. Look, he's being too cute by half.
Yeah.
And as they investigate the question of whether he crossed the line, they're going to find out exactly that. But look, Martha, Comey has had a habit of lying to Congress and getting away with it. So I hope he understands that when the FBI calls on him, or the Secret Service calls on him this time, he will not have the choice of lying and getting away with it. So I hope he'll tell the whole truth when he's questioned.
What do you think is appropriate in terms of the response from Secret Service? It's their jurisdiction, first of all, and potentially DOJ.
Well, I leave it to the professionals there, and I want them to handle it with him the same as they would any real threat or possible threat. No more, no less. But for the American people, I think you have to understand, right now, Kash is dealing with an FBI that has to be depoliticized, and he's working very hard to do just that, get them back to law enforcement, something that under his predecessor simply wasn't the case.
Yeah. Tulsi Gabbard has pointed out that there were a bunch of anti-Trump, anti-Elon Musk protesters who used this 8647 slogan quite often, posting it in different places and using it in their protests. So it was something that has sort of been out there among certain circles. Congressman Darrell Issa, always good to see you, sir. Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, this story, it's sparking a wave of anger. James Comey, our former FBI director, posted on Instagram something that many are interpreting as a call for violence on the president. Look at this. The caption reads, "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." And it says 8647.
So this is what the former director is saying in response to this. It literally makes no sense, but here it is. I posted earlier a picture of some shells I saw today on a beach walk, which I assume were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associated those numbers with violence. It's never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down. So what political message did you think it represented?
Just in case you don't know, most people do. In the dictionary, it defines 86 as slang for to throw out, to get rid of, and to refuse service to. A lot of restaurants use this. When I was a waitress, they would put 86 green beans on the chalkboard, so you knew we were out of it.
But when it comes to law enforcement, a lot of times 86 means death.
That's
Kill him.
right.
By 86th him, he's dead. So we thought the head of the FBI has to know what 86 can be
100%.
used. Why would you post that? Number one, who cares what James Comey thinks? Well, he spends his time on the beach. I'm wondering, did he do that rock formation?
Right, I was wondering that too.
Or do you think he just
100%.
walked on and thought you'd share it? So this caused Don Jr. stumbled on it first and said, "Are you calling for the assassination of my dad?"
Yeah.
So here's the president responding to it.
He knew exactly what that meant. A child knows what that meant. If you're the FBI director and you don't know what that meant assassination. And it says it loud and clear. Now, he wasn't very competent, but he was competent enough to know what that meant. And he did it for a reason, and he was hit so hard. Because people like me, and they like what's happening with our country. Our country's become respected again, and all this. And he's calling for the assassination of the president.
Obviously, he apologized and said he
Well, he
wasn't calling
apologized
for
'cause he was
violence.
hit.
But
look, he's a very bad.
What do you want to see happen? What do you want to see happen?
I don't want to take a position on it because that's going to be up to Pam and all of the great people. But I will say this: I think it's a terrible thing. And when you add his history to that, if he had a clean history, he doesn't. He's a dirty cop. He's a dirty cop. And if he had a clean history, I could understand if there was a leniency. But I'm going to let them make that decision.
Tulsi Gabbard was asked, "Do you believe that Comey should be in jail?" She said, "I do." Any other person with a position of influence that has people who take him very seriously with a guy of that stature, his experience, and with propaganda media has built him up to be. She's very concerned. So Secret Service is now dispatched to investigate.
And Don Jr. said, "Just James Comey casually calling for my dad to be murdered. This is who the dim media worships, demented."
We've already had 2 attempted assassination
Correct.
attempts on the president.
Why
of the
would you
United States.
encourage that?
Why would you put that out there? And playing stupid is not going to get you anywhere. I look forward to the investigation.
Good morning, everybody. He's back in the headlines, back in the news for all the wrong reasons. And moments ago, President Trump responded. First, the former FBI director James Comey accused of posting an online threat against the president, and the president giving his first reaction to Fox News. So that's where we begin today. We got questions. We'll get to them now. I'm Bill Hemmer. Welcome to Friday. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm Dana Perino, and this is America's Newsroom. This is not the story I thought we would be covering on this Friday. So much has happened this week, but here's what happened last night. So Comey posted this picture on Instagram, and he wrote, "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." So the shells read 8647. 86 is slang for get rid of, and President Trump is, of course, the 47th president of the United States.
So obviously not sitting well with the White House, especially in light of the president surviving 2 attempts on his life. Comey deleted the post. He took it down. He says he did not realize that some people associate the number 86 with violence. Who knew, right? From a former FBI director. So last hour overseas with Brett Baer, President Trump says he ain't buying it.
Exactly what that meant. A child knows what that meant. If you're the FBI director and you don't know what that meant assassination. And it says it loud and clear. Now, he wasn't very competent, but he was competent enough to know what that meant, and he did it for a reason, and he was hit so hard because people like me, and they like what's happening with our country. Our country's become respected again, and all this. And he's calling for the assassination of the president.
Obviously, he apologized and said he did.
Well, he apologized because he was hit. Look, he's a very bad.
What do you want to see happen? What do you want to see happen?
I don't want to take a position on it because that's going to be up to Pam and all of the great people. But I will say this: I think it's a terrible thing, and when you add his history to that, if he had a clean history, he doesn't. He's a dirty cop. He's a dirty cop, and if he had a clean history, I could understand if there was a leniency, but I'm going to let them make that decision.
Katie Pavlich and Noah Rothman are on deck, but first let's go to Rich Edson. He's in Washington, D.C. Hi, Rich. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Dana. Well, this isn't over for the former FBI director. A source with the United States Secret Service says officials will send agents to interview James Comey about this Instagram post. The director of national intelligence says the feds should arrest Comey.
The rule of law says people like him who issue direct threats against the President of the United States, essentially issuing a call to assassinate him, must be held accountable under the law.
Do you believe Comey should be in jail?
I do. I'm very concerned for the president's life. We've already seen assassination attempts. I'm very concerned for his life. And James Comey, in my view, should be held accountable.
Now, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff said it's deeply concerning to all of us being taken seriously. Yesterday, Comey shared on Instagram that post of what he called a shell formation on the beach, outlining the numbers 8647. 86 informally means to get rid of. If you've ever worked in a restaurant, you say 86 to strike an item from the menu. As for 47, this is for the 47th term for President Trump's 47th president, and one who has had two highly publicized attempts on his life last summer. Now, Comey deleted the post and then wrote, quote, "I posted a picture earlier of some shells I saw on a beach walk, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associated those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down." In his first term, President Trump fired Comey as FBI director. Comey had opened an investigation into the 2016 Trump campaign's Russian contacts. The White House said Trump fired Comey because he mishandled the investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email server. Comey then wrote a book accusing Trump of unethical behavior. Dana, Bill, back to you.
All right, thank you so much.
So there's a lot to chew on here. We'll say hey to Katie and Noah, and good morning to both of you on a Friday morning. As Dana said, I didn't think we'd be covering this today, but here we is. All right. In January of 2024, op-ed James Comey said we should always worry about political violence, especially when violent rhetoric and behavior are embraced, even celebrated by one of our political parties and its leader. Noah, I don't know how you feel about it. Was he trying to joke, or was he trying to take a side shot, or was he just looking for attention?
I don't know. It's hard to put James Comey on the couch. I suspect the U.S. Secret Service will take a visit to him and gauge his mental state. I suspect they'll find what we all can see with our own eyes, a delusional old narcissist who spends way too much time attempting to curry favor online with the people he thinks are the cool kids. I suspect this is about as genuine a threat as the time Donald Trump said Liz Cheney had not faced fire in combat, and everybody pretended as though he had called for her to face a firing squad. That sort of scene-chewing theatrics is really good for your engagement, and I suspect that's exactly what James Comey was after, because that's what he's always after, attention. That being said, the online forums I'm sure he haunts are really into this sort of thing. They do want to see violence. They are impressionable.
Just to that
encourageable.
point, his explanation was, I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence.
Well, I don't. Well, I certainly didn't.
86?
But that doesn't, well, to me that's getting something off a menu. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's interpreted that way to everybody, and we are all responsible for what comes out of our mouths and the inadvertent consequences that could result from them. Everybody needs to take the temperature down. James Comey knows that, and he should have behaved more responsibly. All of us are responsible for this environment, and our responsibility is to keep it civil, calm, and measured.
Food servers everywhere know exactly what it means, but you would imagine, as President Trump said, that because it is used more colloquially in the world, that the former FBI director would have known it too. I just want to point out, we've looked for any sort of Democrat reaction. We don't have it yet.
Oh,
there is none.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Of course, the former FBI director should know about this, or did know about what the meaning of this was. And for him to then issue this weird apology and claim that he knew it was a political message, but didn't know that half of it meant violence. On the other hand, he says he just happened to be walking on the beach and found these shells.
Yeah, and he says,
in the shape of 8647. I mean,
and he says it's cool. So why would he? Why do you think that's a cool formation?
Right. So he's trying to get back into the attention economy. Yeah. As Noah said, he is a narcissist. However, for him to then, when he gets caught doing this in an environment that is deeply concerning in terms of the history of the president having 2 assassination attempts, one that would have taken his life within a millimeter of his ear, is absolutely disgusting. And it just goes to show again that James Comey's history of destroying the institution of the FBI, completely destroying the distrust Americans have in this institution they should be able to rely on for objective viewing of violent threats. And now he's going to deny that as the FBI director that he doesn't understand what these symbols of violence mean.
Well,
and again, he just happened to be walking and you find this symbol in the sand. It's like saying a friend is asking.
They've gone out to question him. So this story's not over. We're going to hear what his explanation is for that, all right? Now, the resistance, I would say at the moment, is a small R. I think Democratic politicians have been trying to break through, I would say with little to no success thus far. But sometimes pop culture kind of leads the way. And Dana and I were talking about this yesterday, Springsteen's on tour, opened up the other night in Manchester in England, and it was clear that he wanted a message. Because on the floor, there's a teleprompter. And he was reading this, and this is the message, how it went the other night.
There's some very weird, strange, and dangerous going on out there. In America, they are persecuting people for using their right to free speech and voicing their dissent. They're rolling back historic civil rights legislation. They're abandoning our great allies and siding with dictators.
It sounds a little bit like 2017. No, I don't know how you read that, but I think those on the left love to hear this, by the way. This is like red meat for them. But I think performers like Springsteen have an opportunity to cut through in ways that our politicians in Washington, D.C. fail to. What do you think?
It's quite possible. It's certainly something that'll be resonant with the resistance crowd that you're describing. Aging hippies issuing political statements from the stage is something that I grew up with. I'm pretty comfortable with it. And our system can certainly absorb it. We don't criminalize that kind of speech. That being said, as I said previously, there is obviously a market on the left for direct street action. I think what was more illustrative of what we're going to see this summer was what happened in New Jersey in an ICE facility, Ras Baraka attempting to get himself arrested, in part because he wants to generate attention for himself because he's running in a primary for a statewide race. And if you think, and I think he made a smart calculation there, that he thinks he will generate traction with the voters he needs by making himself this sort of a target and by generating this sort of hostility, anxiety, and an air of violence. That's the sort of thing that does resonate with a small number of Democrats who punch way above their weight in their political
coalition. But it's small numbers of
likely
people vote in primaries.
Yeah, I just find Bruce Springsteen's bit old. This is something he's been doing for a very long time, these overwhelming, exaggerated messages of persecution in America while he's in Europe making this statement where they're putting people in prison for memes and hurting people's feelings on the internet. So the contrast of what's happening where he's standing and what's happening in the U.S. where you still have your First Amendment rights.
It's
quite
point.
interesting.
Like in England, if you post something online, you can get arrested.
You can get, if you pray in the wrong place silently, you can also get arrested. I mean, there's so many things you can do in Europe to get arrested for actually not speaking. So for him to say that the problem is here in America doesn't quite play out with the facts.
Which is exactly what J.D. Vance said in his speech to the Europeans.
Indeed.
Remember. All right, great to see you both.
Happy Friday.
Yeah,
See you soon.
Thank you, Noah. Secret Service now launching an investigation into the former FBI director, James Comey. So this is in response to a post that he put on Instagram of shells on a beach. Look closely. They read 8647. The White House says that amounts to putting a hit on President Trump. Comey took it down, deleted it, said he didn't realize some people interpreted the number 86 as violent. Well, here's what the president told Brett Baer 2 hours ago overseas.
He knew exactly what that meant. A child knows what that meant. If you're the FBI director and you don't know what that meant assassination. And it says it loud and clear. Now, he wasn't very competent, but he was competent enough to know what that meant. And he did it for a reason, and he was hit so hard. Because people like me, and they like what's happening with our country. Our country's become respected again, and all this. And he's calling for the assassination of the president.
Hey, so I want to bring in Congressman Jim Jordan, Republican out of Ohio, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. And sir, welcome to our coverage here today. Good morning to you. What did you make of this?
Well, I think it's Jim Comey trying to get attention. I think President Trump's exactly right. I think James Comey knew what he was doing, knew what it meant. But I think he's trying to. Bill, I've probably been involved in more depositions, more transcribed interviews than just about anyone in Congress over the last several years. And I don't remember anyone as arrogant as Comey when we deposed him. He's in the Clapper-Brennan category. I think this is him trying to get attention. I don't think it worked so well for him because I think the country saw what this was about and said this is ridiculous. He took it down. Now, I don't even know, did he say this was already there or he arranged the shells and the rocks in that formation?
I think it's a little unclear about that.
Yeah.
The impression was given that he stumbled upon it during a beach walk. But I think officials are out there asking him some questions as of last night. We'll see what comes of that.
Yeah.
He did say this online. I did not realize some folks associate those numbers with violence. In what world does that fly?
I mean, I don't think it does. The idea that he may have stumbled on this and someone else arranged it and he took a picture of it and posted it, I find that a little hard to believe as well. Maybe that happened. What I do know is Secretary Noem's investigating, the Secret Service are investigating, and I think Kash Patel said he'll leave it there right now, and then we'll see what happens. But what I do know is when we deposed Comey, what he was like. I do know what it's amazing some of these people who went after President Trump so much. I mean, remember, Comey's the guy who set up the whole arrangement where the Clinton campaign hired Perkins Coie, who hired Fusion GPS, who hired a foreigner who wrote the fake lying dossier that Comey used to go as the basis to the FISA court to get the warrant to spy on President Trump's campaign. That's Jim Comey. That's the guy we're talking about. And when we depose him, all I remember is the arrogance, the sanctimoniousness of this guy, or, just that's what I remember.
Okay. Let me ask you about another topic. You are looking into allegations that COVID delayed the release of the vaccine in 2020. Here is what you got. Wall Street Journal, allegations about timing of Pfizer COVID vaccine passed to the House panel.
Yeah.
Former Pfizer scientists said the timing of the vaccine results was not a coincidence, according to allegations provided by a rival drug maker. Now, sir, Pfizer has responded to this. That company is saying Pfizer's in receipt of the letter asking about allegations made in the Wall Street Journal story. We will respond directly to the committee. There was a scientist by the name of Philip Dormitzer. Who is he? What does he know? What have you found so far?
Yeah, Dr. Dormitzer was one of the top guys at Pfizer working on putting together the vaccine. And understand the timing. November 3rd, 2020 is election day. November 7th, 2020, Joe Biden is declared winner. November 8th, the very next day, Pfizer announces, oh, the results are in, everything's fine with the vaccine, 1 day later. And what Mr. Dormitzer has said, Dr. Dormitzer has said, after this last election, after the most recent presidential election, working for a different company, he said, hey, can you send me to Canada? Can I get out of the country? Because we delayed the results back in 2020. And I'm afraid the Trump administration is going to look into this. So you don't ask to leave the country, Bill, unless you've done something wrong. Now, he's now changed his story that this information has become public. But he said to a human services, someone in the GSK, where he worked for GlaxoSmithKline, he said to them in the Human Resources Department that, oh, let's just say that it wasn't a coincidence when the results came out back in 2020. So that's our concern, because again, remember the big picture. Obviously this was a huge issue in the 2020 election, and you couple this delaying the results with the 51 former Intel officials who lied to us on that, and all the things that were done by the left to impact that election. That's not supposed to happen in our great country. So we're going to investigate this and find out.
Got it. In a word, do you think you can prove this on Pfizer? Yes or no?
Say it again, Bruce. Or Bill, I'm sorry.
Can you prove this?
Well, we have what he said, and we have witnesses at GlaxoSmithKline who've told us that's what he conveyed. So we'll see.
Okay.
All I know is this warrants investigation, and that's why we're doing it.
All right, Jim Jordan, thank you for your time. More to cover. We will on another time or occasion. Thank you.
The former FBI Director James Comey being investigated by 3 different federal agencies after critics claimed his now deleted Instagram post called for violence against President Trump. Let's bring in Jonathan Cott, former communications director for Senator Joe Manchin, and Matt Whitlock, the former senior advisor at the National Republican Senatorial Committee. So here's what we're talking about this Friday afternoon, my learned and bearded friends. Here was the post. James Comey posts this. He sees some shells, I guess, on his daily beach walk that spelled out 8647. He said, "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." And then after he got a raft of you-know-what about it, he deleted that and posted this. He said, "I posted earlier a picture of some shells I saw today on a beach walk, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down." What the heck, Jonathan?
I've thought James Comey was a jackass since 2016, so I'm happy that my Republican friends are hopping on board this train. But I'd also point out, you can go on Amazon right now, you can go on multiple MAGA websites and buy an 8646 flag T-shirt.
Yeah, but they're not being
hat,
sold by the former
bumper
director of the
stickers.
FBI, though they might be. Yeah.
Right, but they're being sold by a lot of Trump supporters. This is not a new thing. He is a private citizen. He did something stupid. He also somehow found a shell that said, vote Kamala. I don't know what beach he walks on that all these shells are appearing.
The painted beach.
Yeah, I've never seen these beaches. But look, he's an idiot. He'll get a visit from multiple law enforcement agencies. And look, he's trying to sell a book. My guess is it's not going to do too well, but that's what he was doing.
Uncharacteristically harsh words from Jonathan.
I gotta say, I think one of the most bipartisan things in Washington might be let's all find a new beach for Jim Comey to go to where there's less political messages and he can ride off into the sunset. I hear this and I just think the FBI director knows exactly how people are going to interpret this. I agree with people who say 86 can mean a lot of different things, throw out rotten eggs, things like that. But when it comes from the former FBI director and when the target is someone who has been targeted with multiple assassination attempts, he knew exactly how people were going to interpret this. His goal is, as John said, to sell a few more books to the wine mom audience who normally is watching The View and things like that. And I think, maybe this will juice it a little bit, but I think that the resistance energy is just starting to kind of dissipate. And so I think we all agree, let James Comey ride off into the sunset and, maybe just spend a little less time on social media.
People do finally remember the 86 Mets, though.
It's my only chance. As a Mets, Jets, and Knicks fan, it's my only championship.
You guys got to take what you can get.
Well, here's what Donald Trump said about it to our Brett Baer. Listen here.
He knew exactly what that meant. A child knows what that meant. If you're the FBI director and you don't know what that meant assassination. And it says it loud and clear. Now, he wasn't very competent, but he was competent enough to know what that meant.
All right, so a nearly twice assassinated president, obviously, is going to take exception to this. I want to move on to Bruce Springsteen, because there he was in Manchester, England, and decided to take time out from performing his music to talk a little about politics. Listen here.
In my home, the America I love, the America I've written about, that has been a beacon of hope and liberty for 250 years, is currently in the hands of a corrupt, incompetent, and treasonous.
Well, I guess so much for politics ending at the water's edge. The president's overseas, and Springsteen does that.
Yeah, look, Bruce Springsteen has been a progressive activist his entire career. I don't think if you listen to his music, Born in the USA, Streets of Philadelphia, We Take Care of Our Own, you would be surprised that he's a Democrat. He performs concerts for every Democratic presidential candidate. So this is where we are. He is speaking out to his audience and telling them how he feels. I think the idea that politics stops at the water's edge ended years ago.
Although Kid Rock thinks that that policy should stay in place. Listen to what he said this morning with Steve Doocy.
You just kind of laugh it off and go, what's the matter with these people? That they got to be in a foreign country talking junk about, the America we're in right now. It's like you couldn't find something positive to say.
Matt?
Bruce, I gotta agree with the point that it breaks my heart for the guy who sings Born in the USA to go to the UK and trash our president, but also just the state of domestic politics. And I also think it's very rich to go to the UK and complain about our civil rights circumstances. In the UK right now, every month, 1,000 people are being arrested for things they're posting online. And it's not hate crimes, it's not threats, it's things they're sharing in messages on WhatsApp about their kids' schools, things like that. So I think that's rich. rich. And I think that a lot of people would enjoy Bruce's concerts more if he went back to his roots of focusing on the music, let the lyrics of his songs tell the story, but don't try and give these scripted speeches that are just so uncomfortable.
Yeah, just play the music. Just make the coffee, just play the music.
I'm going to see him in Germany on June 27th. I hope he's still rocking.
Can you imagine this speech in Germany?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Even less civil rights.
Who's opening for him? Stürzen de Neubauten?
I hope nobody.
Thanks, gentlemen. Good to see you. I'm going to work at the beard for next time.
Yes. Thanks, John.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.